Hi, thank you for joining. I am the Redhead 47, and I have a guest today for episode 3 of Her Psychology. The big question: why do women stay in abusive relationships? In today's episode, we'll be focusing on the fear of being alone and in financial ruin.
Hi guys, I'm Sin, but it's never Sin across all media platforms. That would be never_Sin. And you can find me anywhere, even though my main focus is community building by empowerment of women. I do get reckless and I don't mince words.
So this episode here is going to explore why some women stay in toxic or abusive relationships. It's going to focus on financial independence, psychological manipulation, cultural pressure, and unrecognized abuse while offering insight, resources, and tools for healing and empowerment. I'm going to start off today by thanking you for joining, and I'm just going to jump right into it. I want to talk about financial dependency as it pertains to a woman who was married with a husband that was a stay-at-home husband for 17 years of our 20-year relationship. And I feel that women can face financial abuse the same as men. And I want to give a few examples of what I mean by that. So for instance, when I first got with my ex-husband, he used to work. We worked for the same company, actually. That's how we met. And so we got into a relationship, and about a year or so into the relationship, he said, I want to quit my job. We never lived together. He had his own place. I had my own place. He said, I want to quit my job. I want to move to Houston, Texas, and start a mobile dentistry company with my classmates from college so they can go into the schools and clean the kids' teeth. I thought it was a great idea. I supported him with all of that. We moved to Houston. We were in Houston for 4 years. And for the first 2 years of that relationship, he did not work. And when we first moved there, he moved there with his friend. I moved there in my own place with 2 jobs before I even got to Houston. The friend got married and wound up leaving Texas, and then he wound up moving in with me. So now I've inherited a boyfriend who does not work, that I am supporting, because he doesn't have a job. They're just building this thing. And it was a burden because he did not want to work. And I have an interesting story. We were in the middle of a hurricane. It was Hurricane Ike. And I had $20 to my name. And this is the financial abuse part that I'm talking about. And everything was closed. My jobs were closed. One of my jobs was a grocery store. And the other job I worked at some place like telecommunications, where law firms would have court hearings, and we just manned the phones and just kind of listened through everything to make sure they had, proper audio and everything. And then when they were done, that was it. And one day we were hit by a hurricane. I had $20 left. I had bought all the food, got everything together, and gave him the $20 and said, go get in line at the gas station while I'm in the grocery store. Well, the car ran out of gas before we could get to the gas pump. And so when I came out of the grocery store, he and another guy were pushing the car down the street to park it. And I said, what are you guys doing? He said, well, the car ran out of gas, so we had to push it here. I had a friend that worked at the grocery store, and I had asked her, because she had evacuated to Galveston. And I asked her if she would bring me gas back, and she said yes. I knew I had the $20. And so when I asked her to bring the gas, that was what I was going to pay her with so that we could possibly evacuate. So for 3 days, I kept saying, hey, could you give me the money that I gave you for gas? Because the friend is going to bring us gas back and she's on the way back. He would not respond to me for like 3 days. On that 3rd day, I was like, I really need the money for gas. I've been asking for 3 days. And he said to me, I can give you $10 of it. I said, what do you mean you can give me $10? I gave you $20. Oh, well, I had bought some weed with the other two in the middle of a hurricane. Not knowing how we were going to eat, how we were going to be able to evacuate. And it was situations like that throughout the relationship that I went through. I'm not going to get into them all because I don't want this to become a bashing session of him. I don't feel that way about him to bash him. But it's to say that at that point, I realized that I was financially being abused. And that continued throughout the relationship. There were just different things. It had come to a point where he would say that he wasn't going to work for the white man. But he had no problem borrowing the white man's money from me every time I got paid. And so I found that to be interesting. And at that point, we weren't even married. We were just in a relationship. We didn't have a child together. It was just me, my children at my house and then him at his friend's house. And so, what do you think about financial abuse as it pertains to when the woman is handling all of the finances and the man gets to sit at home?
First off, diabolical. Diabolical that you won't work for the white T man's money, but you are okay with borrowing it from the woman and not allowing her to work for that money, and you think that that isn't an extension of, working for the white T man's money. But that's neither here nor there. When it comes to financial abuse, you said that you were the only one working at the time, and I think that that is the other side that a lot of people don't talk about. I think that the presumption would be because you're the one working and you're the breadwinner, you can't be financially abused by your partner. And so when I hear you saying these things, I'm like, wait, but this is still financial abuse. It's fine to be the person that's working while the other person is staying home, taking care of the kids and doing all of the things. But a part of that abuse is when you are the one that's expected to be at home, mismanaging the money is also a form of financial abuse. And I've seen it on TikTok. Women talk about how they were in these situations where they had to get out because of hurricanes and tornadoes and things of that nature. And the men are dragging their feet on getting ready and they aren't helping with any of the prep. And in your specific situation and example, it wasn't only that he didn't help with the prep, wasn't also that he was dragging his feet. He actually prevented y'all from moving the way y'all needed to move because he was harming or being hurtful with the only resources y'all had. And so, again, I just want to point out that just because a woman is the one making all of the money, it does not mean that she still can't be financially abused.
Absolutely. The thing about financial abuse when it comes from a man, they will use weaponized incompetence to say, I can't get a job because I have a felony. Like you can't do anything else. Can you not start your own business? Can you not save your money?
In this conversation alone, we could go over, what would your mama tell you? Pack some bags at the grocery store, right? You could go sweep up the floors at the barbershops. You can borrow some money from me and start a fruit stand. We see instances where there are so many men always trying to make a way. Then there are different skills that you could develop. You could cut hair from your own house. There's literally no excuse.
This is the thing. I paid the bills. I cut our son's hair. I have 2 sons. I cut both their hairs. I'm a barber. I'm not a barber, but I've been cutting my son's hair since he was 4 because he has autism and he has a problem with the clippers. At one point in time, we did take them to the barbershop to be able to get their haircuts, but I was cutting the hair. I was doing the girls' hair. I was doing all the labor, and we weren't married, and he did not live with me. His name was not on my lease. I lived in the house with my children. Remember, he lived there with his friend. Also, this is a man that is college educated. This is a man that has a bachelor's degree in business administration. This is a man who graduated from Vanderbilt University as the number 2 fullback in the nation. This is that man. So it's not like he didn't have education. What he did have is a mother that enabled him. Every car he's driven, she gave to him. The house he lives in right now is the house that his grandmother had when she was alive. He has never had to, in my opinion, work for anything. I've been on my own since I was 16. I moved out of my parents' house into my own apartment, and I was paying my own bills since I was 16 years old. So he's dealing with a woman that has been on her own since a teenager because I had a child from a rape, and my parents didn't want me to have a child. And so I had the child anyway, and that caused me to have to move out of my parents' home because I was not getting along with my mother because she was the one pressing for me not to have a child due to the status quo of the church. It's going to be embarrassing. You're 16 years old. You should abort the baby because we are Christians and we don't want you to have it because of how it's going to make us look. So these are all the things that I was dealing with up until the time I actually got with him. And so I was well versed on how to be a parent because I was one. I had 4 children at the time that we met. No children by him. My child with him came later. And so I do feel like he was financially abusing me. And I can remember one time I was sitting in my living room and his brother had called. And he was on the phone talking to his brother, and I heard him say, yeah, she holds me down and everything, but yeah, man, you know who I am and all of that. And I was sitting in the bedroom doorway, and I'm listening, and I knew the brother. And so I said, hey, is that such and such? And he was like, yeah. I said, let me speak to him. He gave me the phone, and I got on the phone, and I said, your brother is so fake. He was just in the room telling me how much he loved me, this, that, and the third. I hold him down, and then he get on the phone with you. He has a whole different story. And that is something that men do a lot. They will tell women one thing and then tell the other people how they really feel.
First, I want to take this moment to give you a digital hug. Just for the experiences that you had in your childhood alone, I think that weaponized incompetence ties into it a lot. So I think it all ties in. So you have the people that's supposed to protect you the most, your parents, know that something that is so horrible has happened to you. And because of how they're going to be viewed by polite society, they aren't taking into account how you were harmed in these situations and what would have been best for your own healing. And then we see, again, you have a partner. And I do want to say, for those who are in the audience and those who are listening, studies show that a person who has experienced SA may experience it or is more likely to experience it again. And this is because, and this is my belief, I believe that men can see it on you. And it's not like a way that you carry yourself, so much so as, sometimes you can be a little defeated by your circumstances. This is why we say to other women, stop apologizing so much, because a person who apologizes a lot, it shows that, there is a weak sense of self. And that's not to say, that applies to everybody. But when it comes to men like that, they are weaponizing their competence because they see it on you, but at the same time, they recognize that it's more like they want to exploit your light. And so it's like they see that you've been through things, but at the same time, they recognize that you've overcame these things. So yeah, you've had these experiences, but at the same time, you putting your kids in a good home. They always look good. They always dress to impress. You keeping their hair cut. You keeping they locks twisted or they braids braided. And the men, they see you carry yourself despite this strength. And I think a part of them wants to come in and tear you down even more, if that makes sense. And some of the forms, the ways that they do it is through manipulation tactics. And this is when the weaponized incompetence come in, because you do so much for everybody around you. They if I act like I don't know how to do it the same way a toddler would, toddlers don't act, I'm sorry, but the same way a toddler needs guidance and help from the parental figure, a lot of times the men come and, like you said, he was coddled, his mom did so much for him, he already learned how to manipulate and weaponize that incompetence in that relationship, and more than likely he did it in all the other relationships, and that is not limited to the one you had with him.
I think the thing with him that should have been the telltale sign was he had come home one day and he was very upset. And I said, well, what's going on with you? And he said, well, I was just on the phone with one of my friends, and he told me that one of our older friends said that I'm complacent with a pack of hot dogs and a loaf of bread and some weed. That didn't click in my head because I had too much responsibility. And so that statement alone, when I think about that now as a 51-year-old woman, what he was saying was that he didn't want anything. He was complacent with a bag of weed.
His friend told that to him about himself, not about you.
He had a friend that the guy that he was living with, that I told you just up and went and got married, came and told him that one of their other friends from college told him that he's complacent with just a pack of hot dogs, a loaf of bread, and a bag of weed. And when he told me that,
friend said it. Yeah.
And it was his own friend. But hindsight 2020, I'm not really thinking about it. My situation to have to move out of my parents' home was totally different from most people's situation when it comes to being sexually abused. I was actually in a relationship with the person that raped me. We were teenagers, and I met him at my paternal aunt's wedding. in the basement at the wedding. And we started talking, and he came over to the house, and we just, we're kids, and we're in the room, and it was my first time even being in there. I got really scared, and I told him, I've never done this before, and he did not stop. He continued to go. And that is how I got to having the child that I had. And I kept this secret for years, and then one day I just told my daughter. I told her how she was conceived, and I just told her, I think she was like in her teens, exactly what happened. I didn't deny that I actually was dating her father at the time when it happened, but I did let her know that it did happen, because she was asking too many questions about like why I've never seen my father, like why wasn't I in a relationship with him,
It was time.
and different things like that. And I needed her. I wanted to wait until she was old enough, I felt like, to handle it, because my uncle, which is my dad's brother, wound up marrying her dad's mother's sister. So now this man is related by marriage because my uncle has children with his aunt. So I had to tell her. And then she was going around, my mom and my dad are related. And I'm like, no, we're not. This is not cute. Don't tell anyone that, because she didn't understand. It's like
she was too young.
Yeah, she was just too young to understand. So when it comes to the weaponized incompetence, he used it a lot. Even still to this day, it is something that he uses. For instance, and it's not about money now, it's about our son. So of course we're divorced. I live in Las Vegas, he lives in Indiana. And oftentimes he will call me when it's not his time to get my son and say, when it's my time, can I get him? And I'm like, you can get him, but we need to map this out. We need to work this out. He's in school. He's doing this. I took him out of school and I homeschooled him. So he's homeschooled now. So he has more flexibility, but his father is not the type of person that is going to make sure, even though he has an education, that he stays on his son about his. When he calls my son, even to this day, or our son, I'm sorry, I don't want to use my son because he's not. When he calls our son, even to this day, he'll say stuff like, hey, have you been working out? Have you did your push-ups? Have you lifted weights? I never hear him say things like, have you read a book? My son has written. He's a published author. He didn't have anything to do with that, though. So the things that I'm pouring into my son, which are going to carry him further than sports, he doesn't do any of that. All he talks to him about is working out and did you do your push-ups and things like that, or wanting to play sports. And I feel like education should be first. I think that he had the opportunity to go pro, and because he messed up his opportunity to go pro, he's trying to live his life.
Live vicariously through him, yeah. Damn, That's crazy. But again, like I said, I do want to just take this opportunity to give you a virtual hug, because I told you before, and I pray that this is a compliment, but you do not look like what you've been through. When I say the strength that just resonates off of you, and just how you take these things that have happened to you in your life and you make them into an art. How you are taking all of these experiences and just doing so much more with them, as well as allowing and making space for other women to do the same. I can talk about how you supported me, but I don't want to go into that because this is your thing. But that's one I just want to say, but when it comes to men, they have this thing where their masculinity is all that matters to them, and it kind of makes them a little delusional about how valuable they are in not only just the lives of their children and the women they have children with, but also society. And so what I'm seeing from what you're telling me is like, sometimes it's best if you kind of just create that barrier between the effect that they have on their children. And I'm glad that you are encouraging your son to, or have encouraged your son to be into the arts, because that's so important for young Black boys who, as they grow into men, not to just focus on the physical aspects of life, but also the mental, the psychological, and just, that saying, stop and smell the roses. I think when we teach boys arts and crafts and things like that, they do internalize that And as we can see with your son, having you as his mom has been such a great benefit, because not only did he publish a book, he has a mom who is also into similar things, and we could just see how your work and your trials and tribulations, what you did with these things and how you made it positive, how he was able to make it a positive for himself. So shout out to you. I do want to shine a special light on and make positive these experiences that you had, So that's
Thank
one.
you, and I appreciate it. It has been very easy for me because I've been a parent for 34. My daughter's 34 today. I've been a parent for 34 years. And one of the things that made me think that when I was partnering with this person to have a child with him, a child that he wanted, as they always do, was him saying, "You're such a good mom. I know, one of the reasons why I want to have a kid with you is because you are a good mom."
That gotta be their go-to line. That has to be, and when the baby comes, it's like, oops, how did this happen? Like, what? It's trying with them, I swear, it's trying.
Let's talk about cultural and religious pressures when it comes to staying in relationships. So I'm going to start with myself first. I have a mother that she's the quintessential pick-me. And I can remember when she found out that I was divorced from my ex-husband and my sister was divorced from her husband, she said, I don't know why she would leave him, or why didn't she just stay with him? There have been times where my daughter had a boyfriend. He wasn't abusive or anything like that, but they got into a disagreement and my daughter became physical. And he was holding her down. And my daughter wanted to get up and from him holding her down, which she was the aggressor. And he was just trying to keep her off of him. He didn't hit her or anything. And my mom was taking up for him. And even though he didn't do anything wrong in that particular situation, and he was right to get her off of him in a way that did not cause harm to her, the things that she was saying let me know that she's more male-centered than she even was for her own granddaughter. And also, even with me and my sister, when we got our divorce, we're talking about being in relationships with men who are putting trackers on your cars. He's slitting your tires every week. That's very dangerous. And you're saying stay with that person because you stay with my father. Now, my father was not an abusive man to my mother. I did not ever witness my father yell at my mother. I never witnessed my father raise his voice. My mom nor my father cursed. They didn't drink. They didn't smoke. They didn't do anything like that. But he was very abusive to the children. We would get beat Monday through Saturday. And then on Sunday, we go to church like we just the perfect family. And my mom would be in her bedroom with the door closed and wouldn't come out and say a word. And all of that was in the name of God and spare the rod and spoil the child and that type of rhetoric.
Man, listen, I could talk about it all day. So more specifically for Black people, corporal punishment, spankings, beating, hitting children has been the norm. And I believe that is something that has been passed down through slavery, through the patriarchy. And one of the tools used to push this onto us was religion. What does the Bible say? Spare the rod, spoil the child. And so I think for Black people, we really have to, my mom was Catholic. My dad was Muslim. I'm not religious at all. I would be considered atheist or more so agnostic. So if there was proof then that there was a ruling being or something, then I would probably believe it. But as it stands, I don't. For us as a collective, ultimately, we hear a lot of people saying that they experienced these things with spankings in their childhood, but it also is extended to why men are justified in putting their hands on their partners, not just, and I know you said you didn't experience it, but I definitely experienced my mom getting abused by a partner, and it happened in front of me and my sisters, and A lot of it happens again with the children in our community and with the partner and within partnerships in our community, because these are things that are passed down through the church. We are supposed to be chaste as young girls and women. We're supposed to be virginal. We're not supposed to safely explore having sex in a way that's consensual with boys our age, adolescents our age, men our age. And a lot of this, again, is just passed down through the church. But the ways that they typically guilt women into staying in these relationships and these marriages is so harmful and so scary, because when men commit transgressions against their partners, they are able to like pray it away. You know, they can, I can't think of the word at the moment, but repent. That is a scary word for me. Men are able to repent, while the women have to, like, if a man goes and cheats, puts his hands on you like we were discussing, or, you know, does egregious things in society, they are often able to repent. The woman is going to HE double hockey sticks, right? And we see this narrative pushed in the Bible from like even the story of Adam and Eve. Adam was told by God not to eat from the tree, and Eve, being the like the Jezebel, or the woman that is responsible for convincing him to do so, set a precedence that made women always being responsible for a man's lack of self-control and his inability to soothe his own desires. So we watch it be passed down over, like I said, sets the precedence, generation after generation after generation. Men are not accountable for their actions because they are constantly and consistently blaming women, because this is what the church says, this is what the Bible says. And we just see that like go through all of the experiences that women are having being in relationships with men, and even daughters who are underneath, you know, harmful parents, even sons who are under, like, because this is not, these stories don't just do damage to women and girls by extension, by the extent that they are around these people, their fathers, their mothers, so it happens to it hurts the boys too. So religion definitely forces women to stay with men regardless of how they're treated. And I just get so upset when I think about it, because we literally are at a place where women are constantly and consistently being shamed for choosing to protect their children and protect themselves from being in the church. And unfortunately, Black women go to church the most. Black women are the ones that are overwhelmingly sitting in them pews every Sunday. So we are the most indoctrinated by this religion that says that we are worth nothing without a man. It forces us to be tied to men. You need to be married to be of value as a woman. But when you are married to this man, please understand that it is God, Christ, the man, then you, then the child.
The emotional abuse that me and my siblings suffered was far greater than I think my mom paid attention to. And I say that because I have two sisters. Neither one of my sisters, along with myself, lived near my mom. Once we moved away, we never moved back. Now, my brothers are different, but they're not coddled. They just moved back home. They all are married, they have families, they have children. And even today, she's the same manipulative pick-me that she was then. I get stories now that I'm writing this book. I was 4. I'm getting stories from my siblings. Some of them are calling me, hey, put this in the book, put this in the book. I was almost done with the book. And then they started calling me, giving me stuff to put in the book that I didn't even remember myself, because I don't remember certain parts of my childhood. So from So from up to 4, I don't remember until 4. And then after 4, I can remember being 10. But before 4 and then after 4 up until 10, I don't remember anything because I suffered a traumatic experience when I was 4. I was kidnapped. And so I don't remember anything until I turned 10. And it seems like every traumatic experience is what I can remember. Anything in between that, I have no recollection of. Until I got old enough, like 16, 17, 18, and then I can remember those bits and pieces. But I don't remember a lot of my childhood. I can tell you that we came from a big family. My dad had 7 brothers and sisters. My mom, she was an only child. Her mother was an only child, which is crazy because she had 8 kids, and it's as if though she had those kids specifically for my father. She didn't feed us. She didn't buy us clothes. She didn't take care of us. She didn't comb our hair. Our grandmother did that because she was a beautician. And so she didn't do anything that mothers would normally do. She was not maternal at all. So when I hear men say all women are maternal, that is a lie. I grew up with the most non-maternal person I've ever seen in my life. And I've had friends who had mothers that were very close. I'm close with my children. And my mother was just not a present mom. She was a presence, but she was not present. And if you talk to any of my siblings, we all have the same story. No one has a different story. So since I'm talking about the unrecognized emotional abuse, what do you think defines that? Or what do you think unrecognized emotional abuse is to you? Well, how would you define that?
And I think it's, as you said, right? So having a mom who isn't nurturing, that is neglect. That is unrecognized abuse, right? Because it's not something they're actively doing to be harmful. It's something that they are not doing, which is equally as harmful. There is a book that I read. I didn't get through it all the way, but it is called The Body Keeps the Score. I can't give you the author at the moment, but it talks about the damage that neglect does to children, more specifically infants. And I think that not even infants, right? But how from the infancy stage, how that neglect has a effect on the cognitive functioning abilities, and then how it looks as it transgresses as you get older into adolescence and adulthood. And so I think that we have to really understand it's so layered, because when mothers are not happy, this is typically what happens. And so when we talk about, being an only child, and then, having your dad and then your mom coming from another woman who was the only child and turning around and having 8 kids, I by no way want to make excuses for her, but she more than likely didn't have an example of, what it would be like to parent that child, and when we to parent that many children. And when we tie it back into religion, and we know that the Bible says that humans are here to be fruitful, she's thinking that she's supposed to be doing what she's supposed to be doing by having all these kids because she married, and it's like this is the nuclear family model that the Bible says we're supposed to have. But then to add, couple that with the fact that she wasn't nurturing. It wasn't something that was in her. And so, again, I don't want to excuse the behaviors, but the children you and your siblings weren't able to experience a fulfilled childhood, a happy lifestyle, because she wasn't happy with her own life. And look how that affected y'all.
I don't look at it as an excuse. So let me give you that. I didn't see that as an excuse at all. I have also thought that way. That is why I'm able to have the relationship that I have with my mom, the non-existent but respectful one. That when I see you, I respect you. I say hello. I say I love you. But that is the extent of it, because I cannot trust my mother. My mother allowed something to happen to one of my daughters in her care. She solicited one of my sisters to cover it up, and I found out about it when I was 28, going through breast cancer. And so I have no empathy, and I have no sympathy for my mother in that regard, because as a mother, you should have known better. And I know it sounds harsh, but the minute that I saw the light go out in my child, I knew something was wrong. Did I know what was wrong? No. She was staying at my mother's house because I had to work. Me and my mother, we worked the same job. And so a lot of times she would be at my mom's house on my mom's days off, and she would be watching her. And so when I got the call that something happened to one of my daughters when I'm battling breast cancer, I became enraged. Not only did I become enraged at my mother, I became enraged at my sister because my sister was also a mother. And I'm just like, how could you hold that type of secret for 8 years? And then tell me at one of the worst times in my life. And it made me feel like she was trying to rid herself of guilt in the event that she thought I was going to pass away because I did have breast cancer. And I feel like that is the only reason why I found out.
They told you this is when they decided to tell you?
Not they. This is when my sister decided to give me a call when I was going through breast cancer to let me know what had happened to my daughter. And I became enraged. And at that point,
your mom didn't tell you. She was actually told
she was never going to tell. I don't even know if my mom knows that I know to this day because I've never addressed it with my mom. Like I said, I don't have a relationship with her. What my sister said to me was, and I don't want to go into all the details. It is in my book, but all the details are not in my book because my daughter has asked me not to speak on specific details. But what I will say is when I got the call, what my sister said was, she told me not to tell you because you would throw him in jail. And the him was my younger brother, who was 10 years old. So I'm gonna leave that there. But this is the type of stuff, and this is the reason why I say I can't have a relationship with a woman that would knowingly cover up abuse. And I define unrecognized abuse as normalized abuse. It's normalized because everybody's doing it. So that's why when you see a woman that is raped, what does she do? Well, what does she have on? Well, no, I don't believe that. It's normalized. It's normalized when things happen to women because I don't think people see, and I wrote something yesterday that I posted on my TikTok page, and I talked about resentment. I was having a conversation with my best friend, and we were talking about resentment, and she posed a question: why do women have to be politically correct when we are abused? Why do we have to be, okay, I forgive you, and the man gets to just go on and live his life? And I equated to when I was 4 years old and I was kidnapped and raped in the woods by the 18-year-old that raped me. I equated to this. You received a 4-year life sentence, nothing compared to the life sentence I have received. A lot of people think that when you go through trauma, you heal. You do not heal from the trauma. Trauma is a continual healing process, which is why people still have triggers. You will never not have triggers when you have gone through things because you are continually healing. You just have to know what your triggers are so that you know how to manage them effectively. But you will always have triggers. You're never going to be completely healed. Every single day, a thought pops up in my head about something that happened to me when I was growing up. Because I have daughters. And so now I'm paranoid. So that's another trigger. My daughters are triggering me because they have to go out into the world. So when people say, oh yeah, I'm healed from that, I never say that. I have healed from the actual thing that happened, but I'm still continuing to heal. I'm not holding it over my mother's head that she protected my father molesting me. I'm not holding that over her head. I have healed from that relationship. She hasn't been a mother to me since I was 10, and the father that I knew, he died when I was 10, even though he actually died in real life when I was 23. So I healed from those relationships and those people because I understand they were sick, but healed inside myself that I'll never think about it again, that I'll never have another trigger, that it'll never bother me. That's just not being genuine. That would be a complete lie. That just does not happen. You will always be triggered by trauma when you've experienced it. Something is going to remind you. I remember I was sitting on the bed about 2 weeks ago, and I was writing in my book, I Was 4. And all of a sudden, the part that I was writing on, I began to smell the rain from the woods when I was raped when I was 4. I began to smell the rain, and then it took me there. I could feel the mud underneath my feet that was wet that I was stepping in. I could hear the zipper to my jumper, going down. Like, it took me all the way there. So that's why I say you will never heal from what you've gone through. It's a continual process. You just learn how to manage your healing. That's what people learn how to do.
I think it's super important that we learn to manage, whether that's through coping mechanisms, the way you talk about these things so fluidly, without even a blink of an eye. I think it shows the work that you've done for yourself, to be able to say these things. And it's unfortunate because you had to do it. You know what I'm saying? Again, so many people, your parents, siblings, family members, so many people have failed you. But I think it speaks to the strength that you have. When you say unrecognized abuse is normalized, that right there is a bar. Let's say that one more time. Unrecognized abuse. It's not funny. That's a bar though. Unrecognized abuse is normalized. And when we talk about the way that people justify it, or when it happens to girls and women, how we are then made responsible for the actions of others, it's been spoken on a few times. And I don't know this guy's name, but right now, currently, it's going viral. And it's sad that I didn't want to watch the video, but I did start to take a glance at it. There's a football player currently who just was on video for choking, because I knew TikTok language, so I don't know if it's okay, but choking his partner to the point where she collapsed and passed out. And when I saw it on Facebook, when I went to the comment section, it was just men after men after men saying, well, what did she do? Somebody even proposed, what if he just found out she gave him HIV? And it was like, you just created this scenario in your head to justify why he did it. And it's like, just that whole premise of what did she do to deserve it takes away the ability to say that some people are horrible people who do heinous things without rhyme or reason. And the only reason why it happens is because, like you said, unrecognized abuse is normalized. And I don't even want to say the cult of man, the patriarchy, has normalized abuse against girls and women so much that they are now parroting the same things again that make the girls and women, it's a ploy to make the girls and women responsible for the transgressions that happen against them, as opposed to acknowledging that rape and rape culture is so prevalent in our society, whether that's just in America or on an international level.
When I hear men talk like that, first of all, I like to let men talk. I don't like to interrupt men. I don't have many conversations with men, but when I do have conversations with them, I allow them to speak, because they were telling themselves about 5 minutes into the conversation. You're going to know if they have any substance. You're going to know if they have any intellect. You're going to know if they're a creep. You're going to know if they may actually be a rapist. You're going to know, because they're going to say something that is going to be problematic, that is going to let you know exactly who they are. And those men in those comments, they are that football player. That is why they're saying all of that. They've actually done these things, because there is no way that I can compute in my mind that if you are a normal human functioning being with morals, character, or any type of decency or dignity, that you would think that that was okay, no matter what she had done. It doesn't matter what she did. But that's not what happened. She broke up with him. And because she broke up with him, he decided that he was going to choke her out. And then he just dropped her body. And as she released her bodily fluids, he just walked up the steps as if though he just threw a bag of laundry on the floor and just went upstairs. That is dangerous.
And it's like, we're not the most dangerous time. And again, these stats that I give is for those in the audience, women and men who may be listening. But more specifically, I do like to aim my conversations towards women, because I know that there's a lot of shame around the things, like I said, that happen to us. we are made to be responsible. And so the most dangerous time for a woman is when she leaves. What does that mean? That means that when a woman leaves a man, typically his response is to harm or hurt her. So we can't keep, the conversation needs to be bigger. We can't keep trying to, and it's the men, so let me not even say we, the conversation, the narrative that they're trying to spin is that you must have done something egregious to the man for him to respond to you this way. But we can't know for a fact that whenever a wife goes missing or is killed, the first suspect is always the husband if it's something that the woman is doing, right? That means that this abuse is not unrecognized abuse. It is recognized abuse, and it's still normalized. So again, this is why I give this information, because again, there is so much shame put on women that makes women responsible. Girls, even black baby girls are to be, and we see this in cases with like R. Kelly. There's more blame for those girls than there is for that grown-ass man that was driving to them schools, parked up, trying to convince young girls that he could make them famous.
This is what I feel about what I consider a good man, which I don't, because there is no such thing as a good man. Good to me is performative, and because you're expecting to receive something from that performance. I would say be a decent human. But the only difference between a good man and a man that's not good is the choice not to cause harm. That's the only difference. They put on their pants the same way, they eat the same way, they go out with their friends the same way. Everything that men do is exactly the same. The only difference between a man that is a good man and one that is not considered good is the choice to do right. That is it. That is the only thing that separates them from each other. If I close my eyes and the bad man and the good man were talking, and they were saying the same gaslighting things that men say, I would not be able to pick a good or a bad person from that situation. The only way for me to determine that you're not a bad man is by your action, what you choose not to do as a decent human being. To me, that's the only thing that sets men apart when they say they're a good man. And again, I don't believe in a good man. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was dating my ex-husband, we met at my job again. And we were sitting in the break room. I met him. He would come into the break room. We would sit at the table. I was writing another book at the time called The Color of Life about my breast cancer. And he had come into the break room and he would sit at the table with me. Didn't know him. I didn't even look up and see his face. I never knew what he looked like. He would just come in there, sit down, and talk to me. I'd be writing. And so one day, I went back to my computer and he sent me an email, and we had this place called Intersection where you could go on and see who the person was and everything about them. And that's how I even knew who he was. And so one day I had met him in the break room, and then he just hauled up and said, hey, can I fill in your butt? But up until that point, he was a good man to me. He was checking all boxes up until that point. Up until that point of getting to know him. And then he let it slip. Now, I understand that some people would say, well, I mean, no, that's predatory. That is predatory behavior. You've been wanting to fill on my butt. You just wanted me to be comfortable enough with you for you to be able to ask me. Now, thankfully, he asked me, and I was able to say no. And I even questioned, why would you ask somebody that? Like, that immediately turned me off. And I stopped speaking to him for a minute, although we did start back talking, and he wound up not to be a creep. But sometimes you say things that are creepish, and you probably shouldn't say. And you should know better than that. Some men just have no type of filter. They don't have any type of tact. And he was just one of those people. He was a decent guy. He wound up being a decent guy as far as not abusing me in that way. But, not abusing me sexually, but abusing me financially. You still a bad man. Like, I don't see, you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't see the good not abusing me in this way, because there are levels to abuse. One person may abuse you financially, one person may verbally abuse you, this person may emotionally abuse you, but abuse is abuse, in my opinion.
I think that one of the larger conversations that we as women need to have is strengthening our love of self. When I hear you say these things, I think red flags. And so I do say red flags, but more lately I've been saying indicators of abuse, because I think that we have to change the conversation and stop saying like, this is just a red flag, because it means like, okay, stop, something is not great here. When more realistically, these are indicators that this person will or may be abusive. And I want to say more than likely. I don't even want to say will or maybe. Like, more than likely, this person is going to be abusive. But we also have to recognize, again, and this is for all women, but I do often talk about it from the experience as a Black woman, because, hello, hi, Black woman here. We have to have more love of self, and what that looks like is prioritizing our feelings, as well as having confidence and setting boundaries. Setting boundaries is so important, because it does point out the red flags, and it does point out, who will be abusive. Because when you set boundaries with people, the most egregious people are going to push that button. They're going to try to step over that line that you draw in the sand, because they want to see what you're going to do about it. And once we let them, men or just people in general, right? Because this happens in intimate partnerships, but also in familial relationships, as well as, platonic ones. When we allow people to step over that boundary that we set, it gets worse. And I'm gonna just be real with y'all, it's only gonna get worse. So we really do have to focus on loving ourselves, and we have to recognize that as Black women, we are conditioned to believe that we are supposed to stay and help build men who are already not accomplished. We are supposed to accept behaviors that indicate that they're abusive. Just for an example, negging. So I don't know if y'all know what negging is, but negging is like that thing that happens when you go on a date with a guy and he's like, "Oh, what's your name?" And you like Sarah, and they like, "Oh, Sarah Barra," or and they just constantly making fun of you, and they'll point something out, like something that might be an insecurity. I'll give myself an example. I got an overbite. I love my teeth, y'all. It's character, whatever. But like, I've been on dates where men have talked about my overbite, like, and in positive and negative ways, but that was the negging, like, "Oh, with those teeth, like, you look like you could suck a mean D." And I'm like, what? Like, this is a first date. What are you even talking about? But just that constantly bothering you and picking at something that might be a sore spot or an insecurity, or even if it's not a sore spot, they will create an insecurity within you and try to like humble you and put you down for it, and y'all just getting to know each other. And so with negging, that is an indicator that somebody will be abusive. And again, for Black women and Black girls, oftentimes we're told boys will be boys, and so when they do these things, it's supposed to be expected and you're supposed to be okay with it. But this is the way that men are psychologically conditioning women. But we on her psychology, and a part of her psychology, shout out to Redhead, a part of her psychology is us starting to understand these things and love ourselves more and set our boundaries. And so then we can start shifting the narrative for women so that our daughters can understand how to set boundaries for themselves, and hopefully shift the narrative of where society is going, at least for young girls and women. Because again, we are taught to accept the worst things from men, and oftentimes, even when we accept them at their worst, say that you found out they a crack baby, "Oh, well, I should still give this man a chance. Has he had any neuropsych evals done? Do you know how likely he is to be violent because of," and I'm not saying that that's the case, right? But there are contributing factors to the way men are, or always have been, right? And again, the main focus is telling women to accept them at their worst. And then when the worst happens, you are then made responsible for Adam eating the fruit.
Absolutely. I agree with that. One of the things that I say often when I have these conversations is that I'm a very self-aware person. I'm a very self-accountable person. My relationship, and the reason why I stayed in my relationship, is that's what we're going to get to next, is why is it not just easy to leave? The reason why I stayed in the relationship that I stayed with my ex-husband is simply because I knew that he needed to have someone in his life that was not going to cater to him and do the things for him that his mom did. Although I did the things that I did, I was nowhere near what his mom was in his life. And one day we were having a conversation, and I said, the day that your mother passes away will be the day that you grow up. And he got very upset with me. And I said, listen to what I'm saying to you, and don't take this as offense. You just got out of my car. You just drove my car, right? You come in the house and you hand me my keys and you say, you need gas in your car. And in that same breath, you say, I am getting ready to go to the gas station with my mom to put gas in her car. What do you mean? So you have my car, you have the keys. You're headed to the gas station with your mother. Why would you then come give me my keys to my car and say, I need gas, but then go pump your mother's gas and I'm your wife?
So being accountable for you was acknowledging that you kind of like accepted these things for a bit.
Yeah, I accepted them for a bit. And then I said, you know what? No amount of having my son's father in the home would be enough for me to continue to put up with this. Because what I'm saying to my son is, this is who you should be modeling yourself after. Now, am I saying that he should not be modeling himself after some things about his father? No, he's his father. He's going to take on some of his traits. He has his genetics. It's there. I see it right now. He's 14. They look alike, you know. There are a lot of things that are similar with them. But I just wanted to give my son, like most women, a father in the home. I grew up with two parents. His father had been in the home with me and my children that were not his. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense to have him leave when now he has a child. He can't even be in the house with his own child. But it became a point where I got diagnosed with breast cancer again, and I almost died. And on my deathbed, I started making decisions about, and we weren't even together at that time. I had sent him back home, went through breast cancer. We got married after that fact. We had our child first, and then we got married, and he never changed. Then the issue became not about him and about his mother. If we would make an agreement about our son, his mother could come along and say something, and he would change the agreement. And I said then, you know what? I am not going to be going through this because this is my son. We share this child together. Your mother had nothing to do with this. We're married, and you're putting your mother's feelings and what she wants above mine and your own child. I cannot stay in this because this will be my life for the rest of my life. I knew fair well all the red flags. I knew exactly what he was doing. The benefit of having my son have his father in the home is the only reason why I remained in that relationship. So that's why I said I'm very accountable for the fact that I could have left at any time. I was the breadwinner. I always have been the breadwinner in our relationship. I could have left at any time. It wasn't because I didn't have finances. It wasn't because I couldn't, get my own place to stay. I don't relate to the women who have that issue. I simply stayed to give my son two parents. And at some point, I realized, no, I cannot do this because my brothers didn't go through this as far as not seeing what a man should be in the home. My father was abusive, but he raised my brothers to be upstanding men to their wives and their children. Two things can be true at the same time. He was a horrible father. He abused us. But on the other hand, he gave them what they needed to be able to go out into the world and be good fathers to their own children. They're married, they're raising their sons. And that's just what I wanted for my son. But it became a point where I sat down one day and just rethought my life. And my ex-husband was at his mom's house. He just came from the gym, and I called him and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said, "I just left the gym. I'm at my mom's house showering." And I said, "Well, just stay there. Don't come back here." Nothing had happened. We were getting along fine this day. And that's how I knew that I was fed up, because I didn't do this in the middle of us going through any of the issues that we'd already gone through. I did this with a sound mind and body. And I said, yeah, this is over with. And that's how our relationship ended. And then I moved to Vegas because I knew he was not financially responsible, and he wasn't going to be able to just jump on a plane whenever he wanted to and come up here and see our son. I needed him to be able to see our son in spurts. And I'm sorry for saying that, but that is the absolute truth. Because if I had our son in his home, and he be around that 24/7, and his mother, because his mother is around him 24/7, I just couldn't fathom the thought of her raising my son. She could raise her son. She didn't do a good job, and I just was not going to allow her to do my son that way. And so that's the reason why I will not allow him to go stay with his father. Now, I left him with his dad when I moved from Indiana, and he was failing in school. I was calling every day, "Hey, can you please check his grades? Can you make sure he's doing his work?" And he got mad at me and asked my daughter, "Why is your mother acting like this about him? She didn't act like this about you guys when you guys were in school." And my daughter told him, "That's because we did our work and we were passing. She didn't have to do us like that." But why is that the argument? Should you not be just doing what it is that I'm asking you to do for our son? And he didn't do it. And so I got on the plane. I told him I would. I said, if he gets one more bad grade, I am going to get on a plane and I am going to come and get him. And he thought he was dealing with the same tie that he was dealing with when we were together. I got on the plane and I went and got my son. And guess who was at the house when I was packing my son's stuff up?
His mama.
And she looked at me and said, 12-year-old is the age where, a boy needs his father and da-da-da-da-da and all that. And when I let her finish saying what she thought was gaslighting me, I turned around and said, "Then why didn't you give him to his father?" She had nothing else to say.
Mom's the word. I wasn't trying to laugh at what you were saying, but there was a part in that where you were talking about you wouldn't allow your son to stay in an environment with his dad where his mom, your son's grandmother, would have so much input on raising him. And I kind of just giggled because, it was like you said, she coddled her son, and you don't want that for your son, because we can acknowledge that when you coddle people, it enables bad behavior. And I just laughed because I thought of that K. Michelle song when she was like, "If his mama couldn't do it, what makes you think?" So it was that moment. But I also want to kind of segue into, or tie it back into actually what you said while segueing into that nuclear family dynamic, tying it back into what you were saying about how religion leads to the abuse of women and by extension the children, because the nuclear family model is not a black thing. That is a white Christian cis male thing, and it subjugates white women. But because we've been indoctrinated into this religion that is not our religion, it also is having the men believe and for a valid reason, which is it's attractive. It's very appealing for a man to hear you are the leader without having to do any of the work to build characteristics of a leader. It's very attractive for the man. It sounds good, like, oh, by nature you are or should be entitled to a woman. By nature you should have children. By nature you are the most important figure in a family structure, but more than just that, in the world. And so this nuclear family dynamic that's passed down by white more so Christian people, the model goes the man, the woman, and the children. it's very isolating for the woman because even if you look it up, it's going to say man, woman, and child. There is no place for the grandmother or the great-grandmother or the auntie or the uncles or the cousins. The nuclear family model does not include these people, and it's very isolating for a woman, but more so for Black women, because there is this societal view of Black women that we are super women and we can do all things alone, and it doesn't acknowledge our psychological or mental struggles that we have as a result of this religion that is not our own, and how we are being forced to operate underneath it. And when we talk about the psychological aspect of it, it then has effect on the children as well. And so it ties back into what you were saying in the beginning about, you know, how your mom was a part of a religion, your dad was a part of a religion, and how all these traumas have unfolded for different generations in your family. And I think that could be said for most Black people.
Absolutely.
When we talk about corporal punishment and how we think it's okay to spank and beat our kids, like I mentioned earlier, and how women are forced to stay in these relationships and marriages and told that we should accept men at their worst because they're leaders, while never having our needs met. And we could even talk about it from a health aspect on how Black women have higher cortisol levels that are correlated to stress and the stress that we have of raising our children in a society that does not care about them. We could talk about how that looks in relation to the Black maternal the maternity, the rate that we die when giving birth, and the rate that our children and our babies die when we're giving birth, because of all of these beliefs surrounding all of this, that Black women are stronger. We could talk about how, you know, even in today's most recent studies, doctors don't believe that people of color or Black women feel pain, and how, you know, Black women are still going into the doctors saying they chest hurt and they prescribing ibuprofen because they scared that we smug addicts and they don't even know that we stroking out.
I have a story about that. So about 5 years ago, well, it's actually more than 5 years ago, because I've been living in Vegas for 4 years. So let's just say about 7 years ago, I had gone to the emergency room a few times because I've had breast cancer. And one of my breasts, the left one, which was the second one that I had breast cancer in, it started giving me problems because in that breast I have an implant. But in the other breast, I do not have an implant. I have my own breast tissue because I had just had a child. And so they were able to do my first mastectomy with my own body tissue. And so I kept going and it kept getting infected or whatever. My body, I think, was rejecting it. And so at one point I went to the doctor and they said, well, we have you on the no Medicaid list. We can't give you anything for pain. We can only give you ibuprofen. And I said, well, I'm not even in any pain. I'm just here because my breast is swollen and it was just really red and tight. But if I would not have gone to the doctor, I would not have known that that's the list they have me on. Now, the first 2 times that I went to the doctor before that, I was in pain. And they had to actually give me like morphine because it was very bad. If you've ever had breast implants and chemo and breast cancer all together, that's a different type of pain from just having a regular breast augmentation. Like I was cut open from side to side. And so I was in a lot of pain. And when I went to the doctor and they told me that, I just looked at them like, what? So you just put me on a list to assume that I'm a drug addict because I'm Black? That's the first thing I thought about, because there were people in there that were not Black, and I was hearing the things that they were saying to them, and they were giving them drugs. And these were drug addicts that were crying about being in pain. They weren't saying, oh, we can't give you anything because you're not, because you're on the list, and this person was a known drug addict. I'm hearing the doctor talking to them, what drugs have you taken today? What have you taken this? What have you taken this? And then they proceed to give them drugs, but then tell me, we can only give you ibuprofen because you're on the no drug list. No, what is it called? what's the name of those narcotics? No narcotic drug lists. And I was just like, wow, that was interesting to me because I didn't know they did things like that. So when you said that, you just reminded me that that's happened to me before. And the day that I went to the doctor, I wasn't there because I was in pain. I was there because the implant was infected, and it wound up falling out of my breast and into my back. Because I had gotten on the airplane and no one told me that when you first get your breast done, you probably shouldn't fly. And I had gotten on the airplane. I worked for Apple at the time. Got up one morning and was looking in the mirror, and this side of my breast was just flat. There was nothing there. And I'm like, where's my breast? And then when I turned, I see the implant in my back. And that's why I went to and it stayed in there for a whole week until I came back from the conference. And then when I go to the hospital, this is what they tell me. So imagine my thoughts. I'm like, oh.
Black women, we really, in the medical field, and all these different aspects in life, where it's our pain is never acknowledged, and it's always, like, grin and bear it. But I really did feel like it was important to say regarding the nuclear model, I don't believe that you need to have a man in the home for your children to model after, because men are operating under this patriarchy, and a lot of the views that the patriarchy is pushing on us, on men rather, is like anti-intellectualism. They're now saying that education is feminine, and a lot of it, the patriarchy, a lot of it requires so much labor from women. It's called invisible labor that, again, never gets acknowledged. And for thousands of years, men have been operating off of women doing all of this work while they get to take the credit for it. And meanwhile, keeping us in the house, it's forcing us to believe that and then they shame us and they guilt us and saying like, oh, well, it didn't work out because that man ain't marry you. You should never knew he ain't want you. Then when he marry you and all of the things that he does to you, it's your fault because you wasn't being a good wife. It's never about holding men accountable. And again, that is coddling. And like I said earlier, when we coddle people, but in this instance, boys and men, it just allows them to continue to pass the buck. And I think that it's when we're raising our sons and daughters, we have to really let go of the shame and fear around them not being raised with a man in the home, because sometimes the most dangerous place for you and your children is when it's in proximity to a man. That's just the reality. Again, like I said, the first suspect when a wife or a girlfriend goes missing is always the husband or the boyfriend, and that's for a reason.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close here. And it was a great conversation. Did you have any closing remarks?
I had a great time. This is like kicking it with my homegirl. This is like, so I do want to remind everybody, again, never_sin is the username, and you can find me across most platforms. Instagram, if y'all want to see what I look like, Threads, if y'all want to watch me tear these dudes up, and TikTok Live. Please follow me on TikTok. Please come in the live and please have the conversations with us. Red is a really great supporter. She comes to the lives, not really coming up on the panel much. She doesn't say much when she does, but it's always very powerful. And for women who are just being introduced to some of the concepts that we're talking about here, as far as how damaging the nuclear model, the nuclear family model is, if you're new to the concepts of, women saying that there doesn't need to be a man in the house, these are the kind of conversations that we be having over there. And sometimes you get to come up there and curse one of them out. One of my favorite parts is that's one of my favorites. I love that. So please follow me on TikTok. And I just want to say again to you, you are an amazing woman. You are so strong. You are so powerful. And the fact that you take everything that you've been through and you give other women empowerment and the opportunities to have the same access to the same things that you're doing with yourself, it really is so inspiring. Like, I am so inspired by you, and I'm so glad that you had me here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I try to pull women in that I know will be, good for the cause, because I really want this not to just be a voice, but a voice of reason, a voice of safety, a voice of sanity, a voice of understanding, one where you understand that you're not the only one that's going through it. There are other women that are like you that are going through this just as well. A lot of times people don't talk about it for fear of being slandered. And I face the same thing because I'm writing a book about my story, and I'm falling out with family members left and right. I don't care. Because they haven't been there all along anyway. So for you to be gone, I'm not even going to miss your absence. But I do appreciate the universe for allowing me to be able to see who these people are, so that I know when I get to the other side, they won't be a part of my journey. I do want to affirm to some of the ladies today. I always try to give an affirmation, and then I'm going to give a couple of books that you're able to read that will be with our subject today. The affirmation is, I am worthy of peace. I am allowed to put myself first. I release fear, shame, and guilt that do not belong to me. I trust my truth, and I choose safety because I chose me. A couple of the books that you can read based on what we've talked about here today is Invisible Chains by Lisa Aronson Fuentes, The Gaslight Effect by Dr. Robin Stern, Why Does He Do That? Lundy Bancroft. I've actually read that book. Women Who Run with Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And these are my closing remarks for today. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt trapped, confused, or afraid, please know this. Your fear is valid, but so is your power. Leaving isn't always simple, but surviving isn't the same as living. You deserve to feel safe in your own home, in your own mind, and in your own body. And healing is not only possible, but it's also your birthright. There is life after pain, and you are not alone in this journey. I would like you to join us for the next episode, When Love Becomes Surveillance, Jealousy, Control, and Technology, a deep dive into digital control, tracking, and coercive behavior masked as love. I am the Redhead 47, and thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.